Hi, my name is Tyler Harada, and I'm going to tell you all about the end of the Shogunate. But to do that, we need to talk about the Edo period and the problems that the Shogunate faced, which eventually caused one of Japan's longest standing dynasties to collapse and effectively be forced to give political and military power back to the emperor, which is known as the Meiji Restoration. In order to understand the full context of what happened during the Edo period, you have to understand what caused it to be created. After the death of Oda Nobunaga at Azuchi Castle, Oda's right-hand man Toyotomi Hideyoshi took control as shogunate. Ieyasu Tokugawa was one of Hideyoshi and Oda's most loyal allies until Hideyoshi's death in 1598. A common trend of the Warring States period was that everyone wanted power and betrayal was very common. Ieyasu promised Hideyoshi that his son Hideyori would become the shogun after his death, effectively creating a Toyotomi dynasty in the ashes of the Oda clan. However, that did not come to fruition. Upon Hideyoshi's death, a power struggle took place which caused multiple skirmishes between many daimyo to take place. The climax of these skirmishes took place in Sekigahara in 1600 between Hideyoshi loyalists and Ieyasu troops. Ultimately, Ieyasu won, and in 1603, Ieyasu Tokugawa was appointed the role of shogunate by the emperor. Upon his coronation as shogun, many changes to Japan's foreign and diplomatic policy took place throughout the nation. This new period of Japanese history is referred to as the Edo period. This is often characterized as a long period of peace between daimyo after many years of war. Power started to consolidate to one ruler, the shogunate, and Japan started to transition into a federalist regime with a highly centralized government. Now that Ieyasu had legitimacy as the shogunate, he had to take measures to keep it, and to make sure it would last and his family for upcoming generations of Tokugawa leaders. So a hostage system was established to keep other minor rulers in check. In this system, a family member of the daimyo would be forced to do a practice known as alternate residence duty, which was when a daimyo would be forced to have a loved one or themselves live in Edo, so they could either be executed or bargained in the case of a betrayal. There were also increased restrictions on who could own a sword, and the Tokugawa shogunate tried their hardest to keep swords in the hands of samurai and away from the peasants. Another important change to Japan's foreign policy was an almost complete isolationist practice that separated Japan from Western technological influences. The Tokugawa shogunate wanted to stabilize and consolidate its powers away from foreign influence to prevent uprisings or external support for rivals that might disrupt the peace. So why did the Tokugawa shogunate fall? Well, it fell because of various reasons, but to name a couple important reasons, there was a growing fear of the West and their increasing technological superiority. When Commodore Matthew Perry sailed into Tokyo Bay, he had a ship that was superior to anything the Japanese could muster at the time, and it really put an emphasis on how far behind Japan fell after years of isolation. And it of course scared the Japanese into taking actions that would allow them to catch up to the rest of the world, such as eventually in the Meiji Restoration, sending Japanese scholars abroad to study at foreign colleges. There was also a severe lack of food. Due to a famine and high taxes, the peasants were practically forced to rebel. Two notable rebellions are the Rice Farmers Rebellion and the Shimbara Rebellion. But what makes the Shimbara Rebellion so interesting is that it's one of the largest rebellions during the Edo period, and the primary group of rebels were peasants that identified as Christian. And of course they weren't all Christians, but it's important to recognize that outside influences are starting to seep into Japanese life, and this rebellion can be seen as a precursor to all of that. To easily summarize the issues Japan was going through, the people needed more knowledge on new technology in the West, the resources to manufacture that technology, and more food to feed a growing population. But the shogunate was unresponsive to the people's needs, so eventually a rhetoric formed to turn back to tradition, and the populace wanted to call for the reinstatement of the emperor. The Meiji Restoration came quickly. Sano Joy, or Revere the Emperor, expel the barbarians, was a slogan pushed by samurai and nobles who saw the shogunate as weak, and in 1867, Yoshinobu Tokugawa announced his resignation in Nijo Castle. Nijo Castle during the Meiji Restoration would go on to be used by imperial forces, and it became a symbol of the shift from samurai rule to imperial rule. With the end of the Edo period, the time of peace was over. Now it's time for the Meiji period, where war is the number one commodity, and an age of industrialization and imperialism started to take over. And with Japan becoming such a strong country, they would begin to be involved in Western conflicts such as World War I and World War II. And the Meiji period was what I consider the biggest turning point in Japanese history, and is what sets them apart from when they were feudal to industrial and modern. Here are my sources. I hope you enjoy my PowerPoint, and I hope you continue reading about Japanese history. Thank you.